Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Peter here, and it's a Saturday morning, time for another relationship story. Okay, so I think for the moment I'm going to keep churning these out on a Saturday because obviously the channel's about Thailand. I'm in the UK, 6,000 miles away. If you watched my news channel on Wednesday, there's no sort of hope at getting back anytime soon to Thailand. So a big thank you to all you guys who've sent me these stories because they're keeping the channel alive. I'll do the news channels on a Wednesday, the news videos rather, and these stories on the Wednesday. I don't know how this one's going to turn up because my light has actually broken today, so I don't know, hopefully it will turn out okay. All right, so if you're not really into these stories, you don't need to send me comments about they're all the same or they're boring or the intro's too long or that sort of thing. Just switch off and go and watch somebody else's. But to all the guys who've written to me and said, you know, we missed the story last Saturday, I've got a bit of a treat for you. I'm going to do two today because they're kind of piling up now. And as I always say, if you sent me a story, please be patient. I will definitely read your story out, but I have to sometimes rewrite them, juggle them about a bit and just make sure they come out nicely. So two stories. The first story is sent to me by a guy, I think he's from Belgium, so I've had to sort of work it a little bit. And this is really about a relationship that really never took off. And the second story I'm going to do for you is by a British guy once again. And this will be a bit of a warning to anybody who's thinking of getting tied up with a bar girl long term. Okay, so let's jump straight in. And the name of this guy is Mark. And as always, for the moment, I'm going to be reading these stories. So here we go. My name is Mark. I am a 44-year-old European IT professional that lived for many years in Ireland and the UK. I always loved to travel. By 2010, I travelled a lot around Europe and it was on my bucket list to visit other countries at some stage. In 2011, due to a very stressful period at work, I decided to take 14 days off. I was really stressed and needed a vacation that was kind of different to the other ones. I had been to places like Benidorm, but knew I didn't want the same experience this time round. Other destinations in Europe or even the USA, as Western countries, share many things in common, so I decided to be a little more adventurous and booked a flight to Bangkok. I always found Thailand exotic and fascinating, especially Thai women. To me, they are the most beautiful women on earth. I was so stressed from work and in such need of an adventure that I did not even prepare properly for my visit to Thailand. I did not get vaccinated or get insurance, which I know is crazy. I don't think I would ever go to Bangkok again without insurance. I actually booked the flight and hotel just 2 days in advance instead of weeks, but again, I was desperate to escape from Europe and go somewhere completely different. The day of my flight arrived, and although the aircraft was comfortable, I was not used to so many hours in a confined space of an aircraft. The flight and sleep actually made me exhausted. I am sure many of your viewers feel the same way after the flight, but I guess it's a sacrifice one has to make to get to the land of smiles. I finally arrived in Bangkok. When I stepped off the aircraft, I noticed the heat. It was like walking into an oven, but I was okay with it because I personally prefer the hot weather to the cold. I went into immigration in order to get out of the airport, and I watched in amazement an amazing amount of Asians, Thais, Chinese, Koreans, Indians, Japanese, just to name a few. While in the queue waiting to pass through immigration, I started to see more and more Thai people around and got very excited, saying to myself, this is it, I'm in Thailand. At last, relief from the heat, I was in a taxi heading into town. The air condition was wonderful. My hotel was on Sukhumvit. I say was because the hotel curiously does not exist anymore. It was demolished, which was a surprise for me because it was not too old and was kind of modern in my opinion. I will never forget the taxi ride to my hotel. I spent the whole journey looking through the window, fascinated by what I seen. Skytrain, the big ads with Thai people on them, the street vendors, the houses before arriving in the city, the buildings, the part of the financial area, Thai people on scooters, sometimes whole families on scooters, the traffic, the smells. I found it very chaotic, but it was a charming chaos. It was an experience that made my senses intensely overloaded. I really fell in love with Thailand right there and then. The hotel was great. It had all the modern amenities, very friendly and very polite staff. A good gym and a swimming pool with great views, which I used at night around 10 p.m. Sometimes this might sound a bit ridiculous, but after swimming for a while and resting on one of the sunbeds by the pool with no other people around, I felt like crying out gratitude for being able to experience what I was experiencing. I found Bangkok Bangkok nightlife so magical and vibrant. I felt like being inside a movie where I was a mix of Don Johnson in Miami Vice or Harrison Ford in The Blade Runner, but an Asian version of it. After a shower and getting dressed in my best clothes, I went out to discover the nightlife of Bangkok. I used tuk-tuks to get around to all the fun areas of Bangkok. And although I went on holiday alone, I met plenty of friendly and beautiful Thai girls to have drinks with and enjoy their company. I also met several foreign guys who I had drinks with, which made the whole experience great fun. Was I really alone in Bangkok? After several nights of going out every night and drinking and enjoying the company of several Thai ladies in my hotel room, I decided to be alone and go for a walk to explore Bangkok during the day. I intentionally got lost in different streets just for fun to see how the Thai people live, what people do, what houses and businesses look like, and after a while I went down to a street that had not much going on. I saw a restaurant, it was about 4 p.m. and I fancied a coffee, so I went into the restaurant and asked if I could have a coffee. I was not sure if they were open as it was about 4 p.m. and no other customers were around. The staff were kind of preparing things for the evening. The restaurant did not look cheap and did not look like a tourist restaurant. It was actually a restaurant, according to one of the staff, that was owned by a member of the royal family. I found this difficult to believe, but nothing surprises me in Thailand. I spotted a very beautiful waitress. She was around 24 or 25 years of age. Very friendly and polite. To my surprise, this waitress spoke a fairly good level of English. She told me that she worked very hard to pay for English classes so that she can gain the skill to speak English very well and thus get a better job and a better salary. She also told me that she was paid more than the other staff because of her English. She was a smart girl. We started to chat and connected very well. We both asked each other the typical questions that you would ask to a person that you are interested in. Do you have children? Are you married? She basically told me that she is not married and that she has very little free time because she has to work to help her family. She has no children herself, but she told me that her brother had a little boy and that because the mother of the little boy abandoned him and left the boy with her brother, she was kind of like a stepmother and looked after him as he was on his own. She also told me that she works long hours like most other Thais from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day of the week, and that because of her long shifts as well as being a stepmother to the boy and having to help at home, she has almost no time for herself and no money. Based on our short discussion in the restaurant, this girl appeared to be a very responsible and hard-working girl, and she was pretty too. I found it kind of funny that I did not mention her hair, but she said to me, "You must be thinking that I look like a boy for having short hair compared to most Thai women, don't you?" Which again, I found funny and interesting. What a difference between these lovely Asian girls and a Western woman. She was humble and looked like she would make a nice girlfriend for someone, maybe me. She had many values and attitudes that I like in a woman. This might sound stupid and naive, but she was definitely marriage material in my opinion. She was not a bar girl, she was a serious and professional waitress in a very good restaurant, trying her best to support herself and her family. After spending some time chatting to her, I had finished my coffee and decided to ask her out. She told me she would love to, but her job sometimes requires her to stay after 10 p.m. if the restaurant has a lot of customers. We agreed to meet on the condition that there could be a possibility that she might not be able to show up for our date due to her not being able to get away from the restaurant. She also said to me, "I find meeting you tonight a bit strange without first introducing you to my mother. I always introduce the man I'm going to meet to my mother first," which I thought was very interesting. Anyway, it was time for a date, but she did not turn up. To say I was disappointed is an understatement. I was so interested in her that I had took a business card from the restaurant when I was having coffee and decided to call the restaurant to see if I could talk with her. Somebody with a very basic level of English took my call and told me that the girl was busy and that she cannot take my call right now. I did not feel like insisting as I could cause problems for her at work. I did not feel like wasting my night, so I went out and met a totally different girl who I spent a few days together with. This new girl was okay, but she was by far not the same caliber or quality as a waitress was. I soon got tired of the girl and unfortunately my last 2 days in Bangkok had arrived. I got food poisoning from a food cart and decided to chill out in my hotel room before my flight home. Yeah, always wise to be close to a toilet. As I mentioned that this was several years ago in 2011, and now that I am still single but older, and my priorities and aspirations have changed many times, I sometimes imagine how my life could have been if I had married that lovely Thai waitress. I sometimes dream of living with her in Bangkok in a nice condo, having a child or two, taking my kids to Lumpini Park on top of my shoulder, and basically being a very happy family, as opposed to being very unhappy and miserable as I find myself now in Europe. I could have tried to meet the waitress again in my recent trips to Bangkok, but I decided not to do so. It just would not have been the same. She might be married by now, or she might have children. Even if she was still single today, I liked her at her age. I met her, she was 10 years ago. She would be about 35 now. Anyway, it's very likely she is married or with a boyfriend, so I think many times about her, how I missed the boat. I kind of missed a once in a lifetime opportunity to marry a high quality and decent pretty young Thai girl. Attached is a picture to back up my story. Please do not share the picture in your video. It's just for yourself so that you can see that I am not making this story up. And he did send me a very nice picture. He's in the picture, and the girl from the restaurant is in the picture. And yes, she has got very short hair, but she's very, very attractive. And I can see exactly why he kind of fell for her. He wasn't an older guy. He looked in the picture, he only looked about 30 to 40, something like that. So potentially this could have been a serious relationship. And as he said, he missed the boat. It never happened. And it's one of those things that'll always stick in his mind. Okay, so let's move on to the next story. This one's a little bit more harsher. Nobody's got ripped off, but it's a good warning for you if you're thinking of getting into a long-term relationship with a lady who possibly isn't the nicest lady in Thailand, if you know what I mean. So here we go. So the title of this story is called Brains versus Heart. And the heading, he's written, true story about a relationship between a British man, in brackets myself, and a Thai lady, names and places changed for obvious reasons, so I don't need to change the names on this one. Okay, here we go. I am twice divorced, retired, and a professional man, at the time aged 65. I was looking for a long-term partner. I tried British dating sites with no success, as I find most of the women older. Not many younger women would be attracted to a 65-year-old man, not attractive, bitter, and carried a lot of baggage. I joined a Thai internet dating site and was introduced to a lady called Ning, 46 at the time, with whom I got on very well. The lady was very intelligent, owned her own business, owned her own car, lived in a rented property in Chiang Rai, spoke good English, did not smoke, which is important to me, and had a 12-year-old daughter called Pon. I decided to visit Thailand in the autumn 2014 and met Ning in Pattaya. I instantly took a liking to Ning, and she was very attractive, dressed well, clearly intelligent and very presentable. We spent the next few days at my hotel. Ning invited me to visit her home in Chiang Rai for a couple of days before returning to the UK. Ning then returned to her home in Chiang Rai. I subsequently flew to Chiang Rai to visit Ning, staying in her house with her daughter Pon, who was also very intelligent and spoke good English. Ning's house was clean and tidy and of good build standard. I was introduced to her daughter and was made welcome and genuinely treated very well. Early the following year, I flew out to Thailand, spending 6 weeks with Ning and her daughter in her home to get to know her better. Again, I was treated very well, driven around to a few tourist spots and had an excellent holiday. On returning to the UK, I decided to invite Ning and her daughter for a 6-week holiday. I thought that as neither of them had travelled outside of Thailand or been on an aircraft, it would be a good holiday experience, and living in a foreign country, a good education, especially for Ning's daughter. They both stayed in my house, all flights and living expenses paid for by me. They stayed for 6 weeks, seeing all the usual tourist sites. The holiday was a complete success. I got on very well with Ning's daughter. I was sorry to see them leave. As the holiday went well, and I invited them back for a further 2 weeks, a month or so later, Ning came by herself this time, as her daughter Pom was at school and could not come. All went well until Ning asked me to buy her a house in Thailand, cost 3.5 million baht. At the time, that was around £70,000, around 85,000 US dollars. I refused to do this, saying I could not afford it as a reasonable excuse. On further thoughts, it was clear, one, it was very possible after a few months it would be the last I saw of Ning and the last I saw of my 3.45 million baht. This risk was too high. Two, As a foreigner cannot own property in Thailand, the property must be registered in a Thai person's name and I would lose control. The risk was too high. 3. Ning suggested I could live in Thailand in her proposed new house. I did not want to do this as I owned a house in the UK and for family reasons. 4. Ning suggested we could get married and she and her daughter could live with me in the UK. This presented me with several practical and financial problems. A. Ning would have to give up her job as she could not operate her job from the UK. B. If Ning gave up her job and wanted to work, she would have to accept a low-paid job in the UK, which she would not be happy with. Pom would have to change schools to a British school, which as Pom was a foreigner, I would be responsible for the school and potentially university college fees, which as you know are not cheap. I did not want to take on this responsibility. And C, I would be responsible for keeping both Ning and Pon, and considering they would rightfully expect spending money and a return trip to Thailand to see their families at least once a year, which is not cheap, particularly as I was living on a pension. D, there was no guarantee Ning would stay with me and look after me when I got old or fell sick. If Ning decided to leave me after a few years for one reason or another, she was smart enough to see a solicitor and claim compensation for loss of her Thai business, plus disruption of her daughter's education, plus saying I didn't treat her well, etc. In other words, take me to the cleaners at my age, and being on a pension, I could not afford to take the risk of a substantial emotional and financial hit. And lastly, E, overall, the risk to me taking on Ning and her daughter in the UK was extremely high, whereas there was no risk to Ning, only a potential benefit. Consequently, the relationship faded. However, as Ning's holiday visa had not expired, I invited them both back for a further 2 weeks visit to the UK, staying at my house. All expenses paid, to use up her visa with a view that she might like to spend a few future holidays with me in the UK. I got on well with Pon, however Ning did not treat me well, silent treatment, not wanting to sleep with me and generally unpleasant. I thought, as I have paid a lot of money to bring both Ning and her daughter to the UK, costing her nothing, she could have made the effort for 2 weeks. This made me think, how would she have been long term? This confirmed my decision of putting the brain in charge of the heart. So there you go, guys. 2 stories, completely different today. That second story, a lot of lessons there. The guy's speaking a lot of sense, and I personally think he made the right decision there, letting Ning go. Okay, so I'll be back on Wednesday for another news roundup. Hopefully, if I'm not busy with work. As I said in my last video, I do a lot of work. I'm self-employed. I do a lot of contract work for the local authority, and depending on how that goes, if I'm very, very busy, like last week, I couldn't make any videos. I've made up for it this week now. I've made 2 videos, but I hope to be back on Wednesday with another news roundup, and then again on Saturday. Okay, so as always, guys, thanks for watching this one, and hopefully I'll catch up with you on Wednesday.